They said mobility was nerfed in Apex Legends. They said you could never go as fast, that the game was too slow, that the soul of Titanfall was gone. Let's take a look at Pathfinder, my favorite legend. Let's learn how to go fast. Let's get started with the fundamentals of the grappling hook's mechanics, and I'll pepper in the actual techniques that we're using that demonstrate them. Later on, we'll cover the ideology of how to actually play this character. Our first fundamental is that grappling hook pulls you towards a certain direction, but it doesn't lock you in that direction. This is not Widowmaker's grapple from Overwatch, or Athena's grapple in Quake. It's not a rigid line that pulls you in a single direction. Most players I see using the grapple will use it just like that. They grapple a point, and then allow it to pull them in a straight line towards that point. While this isn't wrong in and of itself, there's a lot more to it, and you have a lot of control. In Apex Legends, you're able to swing around the point you've grappled, much like Spider-Man swinging between and around buildings, which allows you to generate momentum traveling around that point. Second, the time you'll travel is based in large part on the duration of time in which grapple is pulling on your character. If you use your grapple on a target that's really close to you, your max speed isn't going to be very good, since your time grappling and being accelerated by your grapple is of course low. However, if you choose a point that's far from you, your max speed potential is much greater. To really maximize your speed though, we want to grapple a point at the max possible distance that you can grapple from, and also strafe, as in move left or right, away from the grapple point to get that extra fraction of a second on the grapple swing. This will help us to achieve the maximum possible speed off of your swing. For now though, let's do a simple technique that does not involve any left or right movement, just a simple grapple jump. First, what you should do is aim at the ground ahead of you, at the maximum distance of your grapple. This is something that you're only going to learn through practice, so just, practice and you'll learn it. Remember, the longer the distance of your grapple, the farther away your grapple is from your character, the more speed you'll gain because you're going to spend more time being pulled to that point. All you have to do here is shoot your grapple at the ground from the max possible distance, and as soon as the grapple hits the ground, jump. That's it. When timed correctly, you're going to fly both up and forwards in an arc through the air, being projected at great speeds. When you land, just hold crouch to slide and maintain that speed for a pretty decent distance. Congratulations, you have performed your first ever grapple swing, and there was no effort required whatsoever. Now, sometimes, every once in a blue moon, you'll notice that when you do this, you're going to splat on the ground and lose all momentum. You're going to land hard, and it's going to be difficult for your character to move for a split second. This happens if you strike the ground from too steep of an angle, which this technique has you teetering on most of the time. If the spot you land is higher up than where you started though, you'll be sure to never have that splat happen, and you can maintain your grapple momentum with a long slide. Even if the splat does happen though, you're still better off having done this grapple jump than not, since you'll have covered more ground more quickly. One great method of avoiding the splat is to forego jumping during any grapple swing, since that'll keep you at a shallower angle with respect to the ground. One of my favorite ways to use this grapple technique is to jump over short inclines with great speed, since this grapple jump throws you so high into the air that you save yourself a lot of time in specific areas of the map just by breaking verticality. Next, let's expand upon that second fundamental a bit. Remember that we talked about how the longer your grapple is, the faster your resultant speed? Well, when we did the grapple jump, we were operating in one plane, Y, or up and down. However, sometimes we want to swing around an object or gain the absolute max possible speed. In order to do that, we have to extend our grapple duration in another plane, not just Y, but also X, the left and right plane. We need to get some lateral movement in during the first few moments of the grapple pulling us, so we're able to fling past the grapple point at max velocity. Start by shooting your grapple near the edge of your target, as close as reasonably possible. Make sure your feet are at the farthest possible distance away from the target. You can do it from closer, and practice they will sometimes not be at max distance, but ideally that's what you're shooting for. This is where the explanation gets a little heavy, so if you need to stop and rewatch this part a few times, that is probably going to be necessary, but just be aware that you're probably not going to fully get this on your first couple of tries. Just keep watching, keep practicing, keep iterating, and you will get this. So, here's what you do. Start by shooting your grapple near the edge of whatever target you're aiming for, but with your feet at the farthest distance from that target as possible. Again, that is to give you the most time spent being pulled by the grapple to get maximum speed. If you're not at full distance, it's okay, but for perfection's sake, that is what you want. The instant that you fire your grapple, what you need to do is immediately turn up to, but not beyond 90 degrees in the opposite direction than what you want to swing, while strafing in that same direction. If you want to swing clockwise, you want to turn away from that swing first, right? So you want to strafe and turn your aim away from that clockwise direction, and as soon as your grapple actually strikes the wall or whatever target you're grappling, at that instant, that is when you jump and simultaneously start turning your aim and your strafing into that curve. So you want to turn away from it while you're winding up, and then once it strikes, that is when you turn into it. These are not fast or jerky mouse movements, by the way, or if you're using a joystick, these are not like a instant dump to the left or dump to the right of your joystick. It's not what you're aiming for. You want a nice smooth little transition to the turning away from your grapple, and then once you actually get that strike of the grapple and you jump, that's when you want to slowly kind of ease your aim back over into the direction that you want. So don't jerk your mouse, don't jerk your aim. Try to be smooth. You can be quick and smooth, but be smooth. It's not a jerky movement. This is a very flowy sort of movement. This is fundamental to how the Source engine works. I understand for the Titanfall devs watching, it's not Source engine, it's Titanfall engine, yada, yada, yada. Okay, but this is like a long drawn-out fork from IdTech, right? So this is just how movement works at a fundamental level in this engine, is you want those nice, smooth, buttery turns with your aim while strafing in the same direction to get that air control that you really want here. With enough time and practice, you too will get these fundamentals down so you can make fast pushes or escapes or even just relocations with Pathfinder. This is the bare minimum of what you need in order to get started with Grapple, but there's a lot more to it than this. Our third fundamental, which I alerted to a minute ago but bears repeating here, is the max angle of your aim in relation to your grapple point. When doing a standard grapple swing, you of course start strafing through the air in the opposite direction of your swing before you turn into your swing. However, if your aim passes 90 degrees from the grapple's attachment point while you're winding up, it'll break and drop you to the ground. Now, when your grapple detaches at the end of a successful swing, you'll notice that it happens once your aim breaks 90 degrees from the grapple point, and it's intentional at this point because you already have speed. This means that we can use the angle to our advantage. We can break our aim off early on purpose, or you can just press crouch to break the grapple, either or, and this will reduce the speed that you come out of the grapple with. Or, you can continuously turn into the grapple, insofar as aiming directly at your grapple point without turning away. When doing this, you're actually going to stay in the grapple for an extended period of time, and you can orbit a target or make otherwise really weird and tricky moves. While there's not many uses for this other than being stylish and funny for a Twitter video, it is something that you can do. And if you ever notice it happening and you're like, why is my grapple not detaching? And you're just flailing all over the place, all you gotta do is hit your crouch button and you will detach the grapple instantly and you will return to normal play. Our fourth fundamental is the hardest of them all, but is critically important to leveling up your Pathfinder play. So let's get right into it. While grapple swinging is cool and all, and the big bursts of speed are of course powerful, sometimes we need to cover even greater distances. Maybe we're grappling into a team's backline, or maybe we're just running away from the circle and need all the help we can get. Whatever the case may be, maintaining our momentum after the initial grapple swing is key to our maximum success. Of course, your mind thus will instantaneously go to the slide, as it should. That is the right answer, but it's not the whole answer. The most important thing here is that we need to avoid that dreaded ground splat from landing at too steep of an angle. Again, this can be avoided by skipping the jump during your wind-up phase, but it doesn't guarantee you a good slide after your grapple. Straight up, this part is hard, and I too have a lot more to learn in mastering this myself. But what I've found is that once the grapple disconnects and you're free flying through the air, you want to avoid air strafing or pressing any directional key pretty much at all costs. For whatever reason, it feels like doing actions in the air between grapple disconnect and ground contact makes your subsequent slide less potent, but this also doesn't seem to happen every single time, so there's a little more to be learned and experimented with here. I'm not 100% sure one way or the other, but I've been trying for the past couple of days to figure a solid answer on this, and I really can't. Sometimes, when I air strafe, my slide after sucks when it looks like it should be good. Other times, when I air strafe, the slide is fantastic. So I don't have a solid answer for you here, but what I can say is that pretty much every time I have avoided air strafing and just let go of all inputs as soon as the grapple disconnects, my resultant slide has been fantastic, given that every other variable is otherwise sound. Some of these variables that you're targeting would be flat land or a solid decline of a slope in order to maximize your speed retention while minimizing the risk of splats. You're also going to be looking at the angle at which you came out of the grapple, so you know if you're going to hit the ground, if it's going to be a good slide or not. It's all loosey-goosey. You're only going to learn it by feeling it out and playing it kind of stuff, so get out there and practice. You got to remember, though, this is a battle royale that we're playing. Maps are intentionally quite hilly, rocky, strewn with obstacles. More often than not, even if you set yourself up with a beautiful grapple swing, you're going to find yourself running into trees and other greeble and being really sad about it. This is par for the course, and you're never completely going to avoid it. You've just got to accept that at least once in a while, you're gonna have this happen to you. Don't get too frustrated with this inevitability, and instead focus on making sure that your attempts are as clean as possible. Finally, we're gonna sort of break the rules a bit on this final technique, or rather, it's gonna look like we're breaking the rules, but we're truly not. Sometimes you want to grapple to the top of a building, a big one, and you're at a very shallow angle, standing pretty much right next to it. What you're gonna want to do is grapple as high up as you can, keep looking up, and turn either right or left beyond that 9-degree limit that we talked about earlier. I know, weird, but you gotta do it sometimes. You're almost going to do a 180 while otherwise keeping your inputs the same, and this actually will not result in your grapple breaking. Otherwise, you're going to keep your inputs identical. Keep holding this position all the way through the grapple until just before your body passes the point that you grappled, then strafe into it like you would a normal swing. Perform correctly, this technique should send you soaring either up to or over the roof you were trying to scale. Sometimes I do this so well, and I fly so high in the air, and I have so much momentum that I can't actually land on the roof I was trying to land on, and I just completely miss the building. It's pretty amazing. This technique is great in places like Skull Town, but really can be used anywhere you need to get somewhere that's extra high. And with that, you've got the fundamentals of how to apply grapple to your game. Next, we've still got an entire character to cover, so let's move on to that. Your passive ability, Insider Knowledge, allows you to scan randomly spawning signal beacons all across the map to reveal the location of the next circle. This will show up on your map in green, and you cannot activate a second signal beacon until the green circle on your map turns gray, thus becoming visible to the rest of the players. Activating signal beacons is a long, channeled ability, leaving you fully vulnerable while performing the action. Also of note is that the signal beacon makes a loud sound upon activation, audible to those within at least a few hundred meters. So theoretically, using this ability is a massive liability, but in practice, I can't say that I've had a single moment so far where it truly had a negative effect on my team. At all. However, the positives aren't really all that great either. Knowing the next circle position is often not that big of a deal until you're getting to endgame, and by that point, even having a signal beacon to activate is incredibly hit or miss. I suppose that this is just a passive ability after all, so it's nothing to get really bent out of shape over, but the things that Grapple and Zipline can do for a team are just so oppressive that I guess the developers kind of had to dumpster his passive in order to keep the character in check on the whole. I get it, but man, it would be great if these signal beacon spawns weren't random, so you can always play around getting your pathfinder to one of them at a certain point of the game, like maybe 4th circle and beyond. It seems like a cool gameplay element to me. Like if a team has a pathfinder, you know a team has a pathfinder, suddenly you have extra zoning considerations. You want to keep them not only away from powerful positions on the map, you also want to make sure that they're not getting that signal beacon. And if they do, then you can follow them to get to the next circle better, or maybe they're going to bait you because they know that you saw them. And, you know, there's many layers of metagame that could arise from guaranteed signal beacon spawns and teams playing with and against that, but because it's random, it's inconsistent. At least getting it at the end of the game when it's actually useful. Getting like a circle 2 is completely pointless, but getting a circle 4, circle 5, well, I guess not circle 6, but circle 4 or 5, definitely, through the insider knowledge passive, is powerful for sure. Anything else, though, when you're actually going to use the ability, not important, unfortunately. Your ultimate is the zipline gun, which is pretty straightforward. You can create a zipline pretty much anywhere on the map when using it. Just be aware that your opponents can use it too, so always be aware of a team sneaking up behind you on your own zipline. The cooldown is pretty short, so you can use it pretty often, and it's pretty loud, so you'll hear when somebody else fires one around you pretty clearly. Also of note is that the zipline itself stays taut and still while nobody's on it, but as soon as somebody starts riding in, you'll see it start to sway and wobble. That is your cue, somebody is on it, potentially trying to push you. Next up, let's talk positioning. This is the hardest part of playing Pathfinder in my opinion. The mechanics are hard, sure, but figuring out when to be passive, when to be aggressive, how to reposition, which weapons you should use, the waters get muddled really quickly. A good approach to fights would be to peek an enemy low, get some damage in that way, then grapple either high or way off to the side to continue applying pressure from a new angle, much faster than any other legend could ever hope to accomplish, except maybe a Wraith with portals. In this case, you might gravitate towards a Spitfire, Hemlock, G7, Scout, DMR, Wingman, or even a Peacekeeper with a choke. In other situations, you might want to coordinate aggressive, fight-ending pushes with your grapple. This is my general go-to, albeit usually to my own self-destruction. For approaches like this, I would strongly recommend staying back one of the aforementioned weapons, while also spamming grenades, just fishing for damage, knockdowns, whatever. As soon as I feel like I've done a good chunk of damage to the enemy team, or I do get a knockdown, I'll take a big grapple swing and get right up in the enemy team's faces with a shotgun, ending the fight right then and there. Note that I don't necessarily say winning. A lot of the times it gets me killed and my team loses the game, but when it works, boy, do you clean up a fight quickly and cleanly and oppressively. It's great because if the enemy team turns to look at you and they're getting free shots in the back from your teammates, then that's pretty okay if you go down and your teammates just wipe out the entire team. As long as the enemy team doesn't thirst you too hard, which means killing you as soon as you go down, you might be able to get that clutch shotgun shot in before going down, and then your teammates pick you back up and everything is hunky-dory. But if they do thirst you, then life kind of sucks. So it's tough to justify doing this in a lot of situations, but sometimes you have to just go balls out and try to make something like this work, because no other legend can do it, and you might as well take advantage of it because it's just so good when it works. When you try this, and when, not if, because I know you guys will, I strongly recommend you play with teammates whom you trust, have really good aim, and will dumpster people the moment they lose focus and start looking at you instead of them. You have to play with teammates who will listen to you when you tell them to push simultaneously with your grapple, because if they don't, you're just killing yourself for nothing. In final circles, one team versus one team situations, A decisive grapple push is often catastrophic for the opposing team. Otherwise, outside of fights, use your grapple pretty much on cooldown and do your best to try feeling safe, giving your team a wide berth while looting or scouting. You've got the fastest movement in the game by far, so you can always get back in the blink of an eye should you need to. This might get your team blown up once in a while, but the vast majority of the time it's going to be totally fine, and your team will be able to build up a lot more communal loot, giving you a stronger endgame. Don't be afraid to make lots of zip lines, and to take up crazy angles and locations that no other legend could ever hope to reach. A Pathfinder with a headcracker DMR, good aim, and crazy grapples and zip lines is something to be feared. While Pathfinder is, in a lot of ways, the most mechanically demanding legend by far, Pathfinder is very well worth it in the long run. Just don't get discouraged, and he will surely serve you well. Anyways, everyone, that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you've learned something new. I hope to see you over on Twitch, and if you've really enjoyed what you saw today, I'd love it if you'd get subscribed and follow the social links down below to keep up with my content schedule and for Apex Legends updates. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.